Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody.
Morning,
Good to
Jeff.
see you guys. Dr. DeWitt, good to see you. All right, we'll give a few seconds more for everybody to come on in. Uh, my biggest fear now that everybody in the world is starting to use Zoom is that Zoom is going to start to have that slow loading sign. It's been my fear. But so far, knock on wood,
Imagine that they're adding capacity as fast as they can.
I bet. Um, yes, I think their sales team is probably rejoicing daily.
Yeah, it's all inbound at this point. They probably just fielding calls.
Oh yeah, yes. This is called fishing in a barrel right now, when the whole entire world goes your direction, almost overnight. Great to see all of you guys. Uh, Feedback has been really positive from these town halls. We're just going to be doing them uh, as often as we can. Anytime we get an insight on an expertise that somebody could share, that will be helpful to other small business owners. We are working quickly. We're not concerned about trying to make these things too fancy. I mean, everybody's in having meetings with their kids crawling all over their shoulders and their fancy shirt with pajama pants down below, and it's a different world right now. So I'm not going to try to make these spend time trying to make these too fancy. We just want to get information into everybody's hands so people can get the resources, get the insights, get whatever tools are going to help you be able to go and pivot and come up with new ideas. Welcome all of you. We're recording this as well, so welcome all of you that are watching it later. We've had hundreds of people watch the live town hall that we did on Thursday with Brad Sugars and the CEO of the National Infectious Disease Society of America. I know I was incredibly pumped after that thing. I just kept going. I couldn't go to sleep that night, just on fire with new things to be working away on. I hope you guys got extra pumped with that as well. If you haven't watched Brad's 45 minutes of fire from Thursday, watch that replay. It's really good. Like, I promise you, your head will be in a different place at the end of Brad going on his 45-minute tear than your head was at before that. My question for you is, what if you woke up every morning thinking to yourself, thank you for this amazing new opportunity? I mean, instead of waking up, turning on the news, having them scare the crap out of you a little more, you just woke up feeling grateful for this incredible once in a lifetime opportunity that we've been presented with. Um, we are here so we don't waste a good crisis. The old Winston Churchill quote, never waste a good crisis, couldn't be more true right now for entrepreneurs. And what I said in the email and the messaging before today is, I think some of the most important things for us to really get through, and as Brad said, survive and then thrive as a result of this, is, when resources go away, you have to have a lot more resourcefulness. And so I started immediately researching on who's the top expert I could possibly find on, like, an expertise on how to think more resourcefully. And we have that person, a PhD TEDx speaker on that, is going to get our brains thinking in more resourceful ways. And then we're going to have an expert on all these new loans. A lot of people are in our community have been helping each other with, oh, just saw this just came out about the loans that are being made available. And so we found somebody that's been doing this for years already and is constantly up to the minute updated with the new loans that have been available to small business owners, and is going to share the latest insights on it. And then and with all these experts, we'll open it up to your questions. As I mentioned, we're not going to get too fancy. It's just going to be, you know, like the reporters at a presidential briefing. You just unmute yourself, and I think we'll just go crazy, and hopefully that format will work. We're working on the next town hall that we're putting on for all of you guys. One of the things, if you haven't heard yet, and I'll give a special thank you to Chris Himmel, who's the CEO in one of our groups, that that Facebook has announced $100 million in ad credits and grants for small business owners. Google has announced $800 million in ad credits and grants. So those are really great opportunities to take advantage of, and he is going to, we're going to work something out to get on and share some of the logistics of taking advantage of that, in addition to the financial loans that we'll be talking about today. I'll give you more details about that. One of the founders in our community, who's the founder of Wired to Perform, he reached out and told me that he is offering to make their tool available completely for free to all of the members of our community for 3 months. No credit card or anything. You can use it. Wired to Perform is a behavioral science based HR tech platform designed to help companies make better sense of their talent pool and human interactions, become more productive, which made me think, if any of you guys have a product or a service for small business owners and you want to offer some kind of a hookup to the rest of our community to as your way of giving back, that hopefully ends up being some kind of a win-win down the road, but something that would be useful, helpful to the community, reach out to me either at jeff@12mavens.com or in our group chat, and we'll get the information to the members to take advantage of anything that you have that would be useful to other business owners right now. That would be great. We'll spread the word. I saw another group for business owners is putting on a sort of a town hall type thing, and they were charging $1,000 per person to go. And for us, as I've mentioned in the messaging, these are all free. We're putting these on as often as we can. We just want to help everybody in any way we can. And speaking of helping anybody every way we can, I'm going to stop yapping, and we'll get these experts on and sharing their knowledge and information with you guys, and then we'll open it up to you to ask whatever questions that you want. Our first expert is Dr. Todd DeWitt. He is one of the most in-demand leadership keynote speakers in the world. When LinkedIn created their own course on developing resourcefulness, they turned to Dr. DeWitt, and he's going to share some ideas on how to become more resourceful than ever as we're going through this global pandemic. And with that, Dr. DeWitt, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks so much. A pleasure to see all your faces. I'm guessing that many of you are getting as lonely as I am, staying at home full time. Let me just start by saying I feel your pain. I'm a small business. I know lots of you are small business people, medium-sized business owners. It is a unprecedented, strange time, to say the least, and making decisions under these conditions is not something we have a wealth of experience doing. And maybe I can put that in perspective. So for those who care, 10 seconds on me. I was a big box consultant. After a bunch of degrees, I got another degree and was a professor for years, and then somehow became an advisor, speaker, writer full time. I've been doing a lot of these chats, and I'm grateful to do them. Why? Because speaking live is not happening in large groups in auditoriums around our world right now. So what I have is this. I'm quite grateful for that. I'll be honest with you. Yesterday, this is all pure coincidence. I'm just sharing it with you because one of my claims to fame other than resourcefulness and related leadership decision-making ideas, is authenticity. Truth is, yesterday, I hit my first slump. And when I think about a chance to speak just for a few minutes, thanks to someone like Jeff and 12 Mavens, I'm going to try to address the topic I was asked, but I know I'm going to veer into a couple other places that are relevant to you as well. Yesterday was my first day. I think a lot about authenticity and vulnerability, and that's going to be a precursor, frankly, for talking about anything related to decision-making and resourcefulness. Yesterday was my first slump, that moment where you go, I don't get this. This doesn't feel right. There's too much ambiguity. I'm not sure I can control this the way I'm used to controlling things in my life. And it just felt weird. It felt a little heavy. And what I do sometimes to remind others that we all need to do the same thing, especially when we're in leadership positions, is I went onto Facebook and I made a post. And the reason I did that was because I got some feedback from someone who had used one of my courses. It wasn't the resourcefulness course, it was something else. Anyhow, they said to me, hey, times, I'm summarizing horribly, hey, times are horrible. Your course was useful. Thank you so much. I printed this, that, and the other. It's on the wall. I'm on this tomorrow. Thanks for refocusing me. I read that, feeling in my first slump, and I felt guilty. And I felt spectacular, and I felt uplifted by the people, by someone I was supposed to be educating and inspiring. And so I went online and shared kind of where I was and how a stranger helped me feel a little better, put things in a stronger perspective. And I wanted to share that with you to remind you that no matter how much it is true that you're supposed to lead with confidence and make sure others feel a little more calm as a result of your calmness, your confidence, your competence, it is also true that they need to feel a little of the humanity, which sometimes is uglier and in these times is a little more sketchy, a little more, well, just straight up vulnerable and raw. They need to see a little of that as well. It does not in small amounts. This is important. It does not erode confidence in small amounts. It makes them feel validated as humans when they see other humans with whom they collaborate or follow, also admitting some of those human thoughts. So why do I say that? What we know about learning is that learning takes place in different modes, okay? But your people, by far, the number one way they learn from you is vicarious learning, which means you're not doing what I'm doing right now, running your mouth. They're just watching, especially when they're not involved in an interaction with you, because how they see you think, pause, speak, behave, and treat others hugely influences how they think about you. So back to resourcefulness. You know, you started with that Churchill quote. I got to say, I love that quote. And my first claim to fame, actually, before I became a leadership person some years ago, was creativity and innovation. Now, one chunk of that is resourcefulness. The idea is when things change, how does that impact our ability to be creative? Well, I have some good news for you. One of the big tricks, or one of the big takeaways, punchlines, if you will, in the research on creativity, both for individuals and groups, is that we often get lost. I mean, really lost in routines that guide us every day. So step one to trying to be a lot more resourceful tends to be admitting or identifying some of those routines that do give us some efficiencies, but very often help us get lost and curtail creative thinking. So let me say that again. What the cognitive psych people tell us is that your brain functions in one of two modes, either in automatic processing, and it's by far the most common thing your brain does, following routines every day. I'll give you an example. You wake up in the morning, you hear the alarm clock. What do you do? Do you automatically ponder deep questions? Hey, that's an interesting sound. Have I heard that sound before? What are my options here? What might I do? No. You do none of that, of course. You hit the snooze button, or at least most people do, because you're on automatic processing. You're following the routine. It's unconscious behavior that you've learned, a script you've written. Our day is, in a scary way, dominated by those routines. What an emergency like the one we're going through now does, and it doesn't do it because we want it, it just does it, is it jars us out of most of the routines that save us. Now, just to paint a picture, You wake up with that snooze bar. You go to work. First, you do the same thing every morning you always do. And you almost always do it in the same sequence that you do it. You drive to work the same way. You wear the same stuff. You dine with the same people. Meetings are at the same time. You sit in the same chair. I could go on for an hour by the routines that we follow. And frankly, it would depress you a little bit. My point today is to tell you that we're all doing this. It helps us cope. It gives us efficiencies. It very often doesn't give us the effectiveness we want. And sometimes we can choose, and long after this virus is gone, I hope you'll remember me saying this, we can choose to mix up a small number of those routines on purpose once in a while. Here's why. When you do that, the brain goes, what? It just literally doesn't quite know how to process that, because usually you drive this route or wear these things or eat that food or whatever the routine is that dominates most of your days. And when you choose to not do that, your brain goes, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do? And what the science says is that literally, in a technical sense, literally, your brain has a higher likelihood under those conditions of having novel ideas, which just means chunks of stuff in your brain that you've been accumulating successfully for many years as a successful person. Those things stay compartmentalized when we follow the scripts. When we screw up the scripts, whether it's us or an emergency, in this case, the coronavirus, the brain tends to go off script, and then new combinations, new connections between those chunks of knowledge that you've accumulated become statistically far more likely. So even though you didn't know it, I get to say to you today, congratulations, welcome to a higher likelihood of creative thought between your ears. The real question is whether or not you're going to take advantage of that. So let me give a couple thoughts in the small number of minutes that I have about how you can take advantage of that. Number one, and this is core leadership 101 stuff, how much are you spending time in the heart of this crisis reflecting on what you're thinking, what you're feeling before you're doing? That could be 5 minutes of reflection as you get the day started. It could be 10 minutes at the end. Everyone's different. Find your own way. Do not neglect it now. It's more important than ever because the decision consequences are bigger and because your brain, even the way I tried to describe just a moment ago, has been let loose in an interesting way because of the violation of all these scripts that normally guide your day. So spend time thinking, otherwise you won't articulate and recognize a lot of those thoughts. Here's the next one. You got to get more people involved. A lot of times when, as leaders, we get lost believing that confidence is everything, especially in crisis. We have to project confidence to keep people cool and calm. That's only partially true. The human part I mentioned a minute ago is equally as powerful, and they need to hear that from you. And just like you, their routines have been violated. What does that mean? It means, by definition, other people on your team are now capable, literally, in a different way of having conversations with you. You want to talk about resourcefulness, it has to start with you recognizing that your brain and every brain that reports to you is now experiencing life a little bit differently in a cognitive way. That's terribly useful. So how do you use that? Well, you've got to start doing the difficult conversations now. And what I mean by that is that you're going to be dominated by operational, how do we survive right now stuff. Most people in your shoes are consumed by it, and that's unfortunate. And this is going to be hard to hear. You're consumed by it to the point that you're missing what might be even more important, which sounds really strange, I know. But what might be even more important with your brain and their brains unleashed in a different way because of what's going on is a meaningful discussion about how you're going to be different and better. Value added in a new way after this is all gone. Yes, that strategic level planning, creative conversation really is almost ideal when you find a way to make it happen now. And I know that is hard. The implications for your talent, by the way, are very real. And what I mean is that there's going to be more talent available in different ways than ever before in the near future. And that is difficult to say, but probably quite true. And this one's even more difficult because I don't share just good news. I share difficult messages, is that now is a great time relative to many other possible times to think about changing in difficult ways the talent pool that you're using to make decisions. When I think about being resourceful, I think about the conditions under which we might change our talent. That means switching roles, improving roles, reducing roles, letting people go, hiring people, many combinations of those. To not let a emergency go to waste very often should mean we critically look. I'm not saying get rid of anyone. I am saying critically look at who's been working and why and what that means for the future. Because now, when you're already forcing yourself and others to deal with new levels of stress, difficulty, maybe some creativity, it is probably a great time to think about adding or deleting or at least significantly changing who does what and when and how on your team. So step one with being resourceful is not about begging for more resources and dreaming of more resources. That's what everyone thinks we're going to talk about. The research, by the way, is very clear. If I was to give all of you quadruple resources right now, most of you would not be more creative or innovative as an organization. There's been lots of evidence at small, medium, and large organizations to prove that. What we need is a different way of looking at the resources we have, much like the talent decisions I was just describing. And then I'll give you this one. And I honestly don't know when I get ranting, ladies and gentlemen, how long I've been taking. Jeff, I'm guessing I got about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, give us your best, man. You're good.
Okay, don't say that. I'm a professional speaker. We could do this all day. Listen, when I think about you guys having meetings, not only to rationalize operations and survive and try and be resourceful in those current constraints, as well as what I'm telling you is hard to do, but so beautiful and interesting and different right now, which is those long-term creative strategic kind of conversations about products, services, and how we're going to add value. I think about operationally how you can run those meetings. So I'm going to tell you a couple of true secrets that most people don't think of that get you in trouble in any meeting, especially a potential high impact meeting where you're trying to survive and or define future value added nature of your company. And that is this. Again, leaders want to walk in on time, if not first, loud, and start the meeting and project confidence and say, here's what I think. Do you understand? Are you with me? Can I help you get there? How can I help you? What I just said was very specifically chosen, those words. And they were not, they come from a good place. You've all done versions of them. And they're generally not how you want to start those meetings. If you want to be resourceful, this is going to sound strange. It's first about getting past your own brain, because leaders' success is hilarious. It actually has all kinds of downsides and baggage that most of us don't think about. As decision makers, you're used to being the quarterback in the pocket, helping people think through things. I love that. You're still going to do a lot of that. You can't do that full time. You cannot do that full time, or you will not optimize your team. They have to know they can hold the reins too. The micro safe way to help them start understanding that, which pulls new ideas from them, that's resourcefulness, stretching the resources instead of getting new resources, is to let them touch the reins. How do you do that? Number one, when you show up on time like you should, you do not sit at the head of the table. I'm just going to riff for a minute to give you a vibe here. You don't sit at the head of the table. You sit at the side. You put someone else there. You don't start the meeting. You let someone else do it. You don't ask the first question. You let them do it. And when they do, you act interested and you give a quick take. And then you do that thing hard for all of us that are very successful to do. And you just stop. And then you let someone else fill that gap. And if they don't, you go, hey, Joe, what's your thought? I'm dying to hear it go. What are you saying? Here's a more extreme version. 1 out of, say, 15 meetings, give or take, show up late. Don't show up on time. Make sure a lieutenant is there on time and they started ahead of you. I can promise you this. In general, they will behave, think, feel, and speak differently when you're not there. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying that is a consequence of your status, which we all respect, but nonetheless, even good things you possess like status get in the way of great conversation. 1 out of 20 plus meetings, don't even go. Say you will, but then make sure a lieutenant or 2 are there to really facilitate a great conversation. Then follow up, and how you follow up matters because your example is everything in terms of teaching, like I said a minute ago, which means you're going to thank him for doing it. You're going to wow on a couple ideas. And then this is the hard part for anyone dealing with successful change. You're going to tell them, here's the nugget I heard, I believe I'm going to think deeply about and try to act on. Because if you listen to people like me or anyone that talks about crisis decision-making, general change management, or anything like that, the worst thing you can do in terms of managing change long-term is to act like you truly want and need and seek input from others and then show no evidence at all in the near term that you're doing something with the input you received. So that needs to be front and center. Otherwise, we can't keep asking because it will cause problems in perceptions with us. One more idea, and then my slightly disjointed rant will move on to the next person for you. I want you to think now, while the spotlight is on you in a very new way, that you don't see yourself the way others do. If you want to think about resourcefulness, you have to start questioning assumptions on all the decisions you're making. Where are the terms, where are the relationship boundaries that can be stretched? That starts with you and how you understand yourself before you engage others with deeper conversations about those possibilities. So I'm going to give every one of you a challenge to end this little rant, if you will. The challenge is to admit that you don't see yourself the way others see you. Human psychology is very, very clear. We have all kinds of filters that help us function every day, and that's why we see ourselves differently than others see us. The only question is whether or not that gap is small or really big, and for most people it's pretty big. Great news. If you want that candid conversation instead of the posturing conversation we too often have in our teams, people need to know you better. You need to know what they're seeing better. That gap needs to become smaller. Here's how you do that. You make sure you go humble yourself to a number of people, at least 2 or 3 people that are key throughout your team, and ask them what they're seeing in how you're doing so far, because they're going to love some of what you've been up to make us all survive, thrive, and grow. And they're going to be confused on points that might surprise you. And until they feel genuinely empowered by you to talk frankly about it, you may never know. That's a deficit in terms of getting resourceful with decision making on the next rounds of decisions. So that was probably a quick, fast ramble for you. I just tell you, thanks for being a part of a group like this, because it's great to stay connected and try and think, try and educate. And whether on this talk or later, maybe on LinkedIn, you want to reach out, I'm happy to give you my 10 cents on the issues that you're facing. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. DeWitt. And if you're okay to answer a question or two, if anybody has a question to ask, I'm just going to share really quick some of my takeaways from what you were just saying. And one of the things I loved when I was researching you and reading your stuff, and you have the picture on your website where you see the microphone, the tattoo, and it says "Show your ink." And I love that that you talk about authenticity and to not try to cover any of that up. That's awesome. So my notes I'm sure with you guys were: 1, identify the routines that prohibit you from thinking in resourceful ways. So tomorrow morning, break it up a little by mixing it up. Something about your morning tomorrow morning, break that up to start off already thinking in a different way. Spend time just thinking, like literally block time just for thinking about what to do, what can we do, and not just being busy, doing all the different things we do. Have a conversation with your team about how can we be different and better. That's it. That's the whole point of that conversation. Break up your usual patterns of a meeting. I think the pandemic, when you're talking about being at the table with your team, I was like, oh my God, who would do such a crazy thing? But even, through a Zoom meeting, break up the usual pattern of a meeting. Have a next in command start 1 out of 15 meetings before you join into the meeting on purpose. Demonstrate ways you're taking their input so that they know that you're hearing and doing something with it. Question the assumptions others are making about the way that they see you, not the way you think people see you. Ask 3 to 4 key people how they're honestly seeing how you're leading through this so far. Good stuff, man. Let's open it up. We'll just do this like reporters at a thing. If somebody wants to ask, a PhD expert on this topic, how to start thinking in more resourceful ways right now, getting your team to think in more resourceful ways, have at it. And then we'll get on with Bethany.
Hi, hey Todd, this is Eric Ansart. Thank you so much. This was amazing information. Really loved it. You mentioned at one point questioning the assumptions about yourself and trying to change that gap between the way you look at yourself and other people look at you. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Are there other tools that you've used or exercises beyond what you shared?
Well, I would say that everything starts with leader. Great question. Thanks for asking. I would say everything starts with you as an example. So I'll try and do that. I'm a huge fan because somehow I morphed into being a professional speaker. I'm one of those guys that does a lot of keynotes. And the coin of the realm in that world is stories, because stories convey things that we wish to teach, but they do so in a way that we find sticks because of the emotions and relatability in the story. So in terms of general the short answer is you need to be on a regular basis finding who's the mentor of the mentor, who's the person that humbles you, speaks truth to power. Once a quarter, someone should be saying something to you that makes you uncomfortable. How do you engender that from more people beyond your one go-to or two or three go-to lieutenants or mentors? You do that through story. I'll give you not the whole story because it would take a long time. I'll give you a tiny truncated story, true story, to make a point about how you can use stories to elicit the type of feedback that closes the gap. I'm in St. Louis many years ago on stage. Again, long story short, telling stories. It was going well. When I was doing this, I noticed something strange. Guy in the audience I recognized was someone who does what I do, some sort of leadership person who speaks a lot. I knew this person. I knew of them. And I respected their work. They were frankly several steps ahead of me. And I resolved, as I was up there telling stories and performing, I resolved to go find that person. This was inside a company with, all employees from the same company, 1,000 people in an auditorium. I didn't know why he was there, and I didn't care because I knew that he looked at me with really surgical eyes, breaking apart the variables of what he saw me doing as a communicator, the way I do, the way most people do not. Most people have a gestalt reaction. And so I was intrigued, and I wanted to finish that gig and talk to him. And I did that. Again, you're getting the short version. And I went and found him before he left this big auditorium, and I pulled him aside so we were kind of private. And I said, thanks for being here. I know how you look at these things. Would you give me some feedback? True story. He looked at me and said a few things that were nice about a story I was sharing. And I thought to myself, oh no, this is the nice feedback guy. We've all seen this person. They don't want to be candid. They're not comfortable enough. They don't know you enough to be full of candor. And so I listened to his nice comments, and then I said, yeah, but I can do this better. I'm still growing. I'm still working. What's the one thing I could do differently that would probably help all of us? And I hope you're listening not just to the story, but to that advice, ladies and gentlemen, because it's a hell of a question, because it focuses people who otherwise are weirded out when you ask them for feedback about anything or about you or about in general. So I said, what's that one thing I could do differently that maybe would help me do this better? And he kind of stepped back, which is funny. People like to distance themselves when they feel tension. And he goes, okay, you're a big, loud guy, and you walk around. You never stand still. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking this is not great feedback, fella. And he said, you're a big, loud guy, and you walk around, and you never stand still, and you wear glasses. And I'm thinking this is the worst feedback I've ever received. He goes, well, when you're moving around, getting all excited in your stories, your glasses move, and you change them, and you put them back where they go every single time, just like this. But the truth is, you do it a little differently when you're holding the remote control clicker in your hands for your PowerPoint slides. And no kidding, this actually happened to me. And he stepped back about 3 or 4 more inches, and he just looked at me and he said, I'm very sorry to tell you this, Todd, but today you gave your audience the bird about 50 times. He actually told me that. So I said to him the only thing that made any sense whatsoever, because I was quite embarrassed. And I said, well, do you think anyone noticed? And he told me, of course they did, but they dismissed it quickly because they were in tune with your message. And so what I got to say to you is don't focus on the imperfections. Don't worry about them. If you're trying to elicit some information about you that might get that gap as small as possible, being humbled the way I was literally in that story, and the way you might be unexpectedly is okay, because that makes people feel a little more human. And when that happens, they are far more likely to speak up and be candid about what they see in you. That's why those stories and moments of vulnerability might be your best tool.
Great. Does somebody else want to ask
Thank you.
another question on how to think in more resourceful ways through this?
Yeah, I have a question.
Great.
Am I on there? Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of leadership is now talking about authenticity and what you were just talking about, being vulnerable. And I love it, and it feels really good, and I enjoy having that connection with my people. You did mention in the beginning the vulnerability in moderation.
Yeah.
Can you expand more about how much moderation is appropriate?
It's a great question. So the truth is that every single one of us is different and often profoundly different. There is no perfect answer to your question. I get this all the time as an authenticity guy who talks about it all the time. My most popular keynote, show your ring. So people want to say, great, good stuff. But wait a minute. Are there downsides to authenticity and vulnerability? Is there too much? And then I go, well, yeah, we all work with Bob. Okay, let's not call him by his real name, but we do not want more authenticity from Bob. We've got quite enough already. I submit that's true and that's honest. So the question is, where is your baseline in the group? That is to say, on average, what's the personal vibe? How much is there? The reason I'm on this crusade, and many others like me, is because the baseline we witness is very often, I mean, this is unscientific, but I've got an anecdotal pool from teams I meet of thousands. And very often it is measured, it is distant, it is professional in a calculated transactional way. And everyone says to me when I start talking about authenticity, man, you're not supposed to be friends at work, right, Todd? And I said, I didn't tell you to be friends. What I'm telling you is that here's best friends, here's cold, calculated, professional, transactional. There's a sweet spot in the middle that we hardcore neglect, where you are a professional, but you are also reasonably, in a measured sense, personal, because you can talk about and care about the person and their interests, not just their technical skills they bring to the role. The question as to how much does come down to an interpersonal process where you have to watch people. So the answer is like this: what are the signs someone is weirded out because you're being too darn honest, open, and authentic with them? And the question is, the answer is, you'll see it in their face. You'll see it as they turn away from you. These are well-known body language things people do without thinking. They'll distance this way. They'll turn one of these ways, all of which is an unconscious reaction to you being too personal and helping them unexpectedly feel tension. Or they'll grimace or look away. That's very common. Or they'll talk to you less. If you see an increase in any of those things relative to the baseline you're used to with the person that you're talking with, you know you've crossed a line for them. So there, I have to admit that it is about their line. But I also have to end my answer to your question by saying, it's okay if you cross that line a few times for a few people. That is an acceptable small cost for overall moving the group's baseline to a slightly more authentic, personal, real level.
Great answer. Another question, and then we'll move on to Bethany Barnes on all the loans that are available to small business owners. Top expert in the world here on how to think more resourcefully as a leader. Anybody else want to dive in? I guess.
Right. Hi. Yeah. Hi. This is Whitney Ritchie. So I hate to sound, so savage in this question, but there will be, some business owners that will be exiting the market. Do you have any suggestions on how to tactfully be aware of those things, since we're talking about being resourceful and all?
Could you clarify for me? Tactfully be aware of what?
Of businesses that are going to want to sell, that are going to be, I own an insurance agency, and there are a lot of people in my field that are having a lot more challenges of going completely remote and keeping up with all of these changes. And it's on my radar that there could be some really good agents that are going to be ready to tap out and sell. So do you have any advice for how to, I don't want to be reaching out to people as blatant as, like there's blood in the water kind of thing, but I don't want to miss opportunities at the same time.
Then you just summarized it perfectly. So I'm no expert in your business. I'm a wonderful generalist. I have to say, what are the rules and regs and laws? That's the formal side. Do you know them? What is the alleged statement for how one in your position acts ethically? Now, I'm sure those exist, and you can go look at the website anytime you want to, so to speak. And then there's the informal understood norms. Now, norms tend to be more powerful, by the way, in groups than formal rules and regs. I would say adhere to the very best of your ability to both sides of that equation, the formal and the informal. And here's how you get around the muzzle you might feel if you strictly interpret all of those ethical guidelines in communicating under these circumstances. You do so through transparency. You don't hide communications any more than necessary, and you divulge about yourself and the difficulty, the upside and the difficulty of your situation, so that others know you're not being predatory, because you're being as vulnerable as you can, as transparent as you can. There tends to be, whether it's inside a group or at a business owner level, there tends to be a reduction in transparency during difficult times. The more weird things get, the more people hold information close and don't share. If you want people to believe in you, not see you as a predator, but see you as a potential solution or partner or something else that's positive, they need to believe that you're acting in good faith, expressing things they can relate to because you're going through some version of them too. Your best defense is a little more honesty than normal, even if it makes you uncomfortable. But the short answer is start with the rules, regs, and the informal norms that your colleagues in the biz talk about as your guidelines. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
And I would say, you know, you're throwing a life preserver to people as well. That's a win-win. And you made me think that could be another topic on a town hall. We started today's meeting talking about some of the greatest opportunities of our lifetime are hidden in these ashes that we're coming out of right now. And one of them, Whitney, you touched on right there, is the opportunity to make some acquisitions during all this. And maybe we'll line up another town hall with some M&A experts on, you know, for those of you that are looking at this as an opportunity to possibly make some acquisitions during all this. So making acquisition, thank you, Dr. DeWitt. Here's my smooth segue there. Speaking of making acquisitions, that's going to require some capital. Brad Sugars, who was on Thursday, you know, he is a highly successful guy. He's got enough money for the rest of his life and a few more reincarnations. And he's still going and getting loans for his businesses right now because, you know, the best time to fix a leaky roof is when it's sunny outside. And so we have Bethany Barnes on this town hall as well. Bethany, are you there before I pass the mic?
Hi, Jeff. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Bethany Barnes helps small businesses and startups across the United States with custom business plans, projections, assumptions for SBA 7A, which is a very hot topic all of a sudden right now, 504, USDA, conventional loans, and others. She was awarded by Enterprise.com as top consultant, and I know she is burning the can on both sticks right now with everything happening in the world, because I'll get emails back from you at like, you know, 4:45 in the morning and like, oh wow, she's still going too. So with that said, thank you so much, Bethany, for being here. And Bethany is going to share the latest up to the minute, you know, of what to do, all the things that are available, all the different options, and I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. And Todd, thank you for telling me that I can exit my staff meetings and not really attend them with any, you know, regular frequency. Thank you. That was so helpful. And so I'm not a professional speaker. I'm a professional information collector. And so I will be distilling a lot of information to you with a PowerPoint, and you'll want to take this information down when we go through some of this. So again, I am not professional. I have the ums and the ahs, and I'm sorry about that, but I do have some good information for you today. I'm going to share my screen with you and talk about some of this disaster funding that's available. Here we go. So here we go. So a little bit about me. I am a Floridian. I live here in Jacksonville, Florida. I have an undergraduate degree in biology, so naturally I write business plans for a living. I've been doing this since 2014 and done a couple hundred business plans at this point, specifically for an SBA underwriting audience, and have some creative solutions for small business finance. I do like to rescue dogs, and I read a lot of books. Not as much lately because I've been watching the news. I'm throwing my television out. Also, my colleague that is not on this call right now is a gentleman named Ed Randall. He's my partner in this endeavor where we're helping clients apply for these specialty disaster loans and things. He's a 20-year veteran in the SBA industry, and we call him our packager. And he's quality controlling all of the packages that we're doing for our clients to make sure that they're correct the first time, every time, and that they don't get pushed to the bottom of a pile. So that being said, every presentation I give, listen, I talk about business plans and I talk about SBA loans. Okay, I know what my topic is and it's super boring. So statistically speaking, when you see pictures of, there's a study done that shows when you see pictures of baby animals during a presentation, you retain 70% more of that information. So I don't have any other interesting slides other than to show you baby animals while we're speaking about this very information heavy topic. So there are a couple of different types of disaster loans. You can get them through your state through a bridge loan. In fact, there's one through Florida. If you're in Florida, I see some of my colleagues on this call, hello, and then federal. However, for instance, in Connecticut, there was a bridge loan program in Connecticut just in the last 2 weeks that they've cut off because they ran out of money for that. So if you're in a particular state, you may Google your state's name and disaster loan assistance through your particular state and see if there's anything available there. I'll briefly go over the state of Florida because there are a couple folks I see on this call from Florida. There's an up to $50 million fund. We're hearing that there's more going to be available. And what this is an up to $50,000 bridge the gap loan. And in some cases, it can go up to $100,000. And it's based on creditworthiness, a demonstrated need. And this loan is 0% for 12 months, and then it's 12% thereafter, because it's intended to be paid back quickly, either with insurance proceeds or with like business interruption proceeds, or through a federal loan program that you have, or if you pay it back yourself. And so there are some federal programs that I do want to talk about. You guys have been hearing a lot about this, so just hold tight with me. This first loan that we've been helping our clients with is the SBA EIDL Federal Disaster Loan Program. Currently, there's $50 billion available for this, and every day I watch the news, and our president keeps saying there's going to be more in this, and we do believe there's more coming down the line for this. This is for states, businesses that are in states that have been declared a disaster. Florida was declared a disaster on March 19th. Other states were added before that and have been added since then, and you can go to sba.gov and look that up. These loans are up to $2 million. If you're a not-for-profit, the interest rate will be 2.75%. For for-profit corporations, it's 3.75%, and it can be amortized up to 30 years. If you had pretty good cash flow prior to the disaster, your term is going to be less than 30 years. SBA underwriting guidelines apply. So 50% of disaster loan applications are rejected for these reasons. For creditworthiness, if the personal borrower's credit is under 630 or 640, or if it's not higher than 640 or 650 with a good explanation, then we suggest people look elsewhere. These disaster loans are based on creditworthiness, and they're not for you if your credit is not up to that standard. Also, if you've been arrested in the last 6 months, or if you've ever defaulted on a government loan like FHA, VA, Fannie, Freddie, or any federal student loans, if there's been a default, not necessarily a late payment like 10 years ago, but a default, that will automatically exclude you from borrowing any of these federal disaster funds. And these applications are being taken through December 20th of 2020. So this process to do it is pretty labyrinthine. And if you're good at filling out these forms, for instance, I see my colleague Whitney on here, and you all fill out forms all day long. I would suggest that you all look into this. And if you can't figure it out yourselves, then go to the SBDC, your local Small Business Development Council. And then there are companies like mine, packaging companies, that can help you apply for this. Now let's talk about what's been in the news lately. The PPP. Everybody's heard about the PPP. What is it? It's the Paycheck Protection Program. And so it's a loan forgiveness sort of program. It's up to $350 billion is in this fund. And the way they calculate the amount that you borrow is that they look at your trailing P&L from February 1 of 19 through January 31 of 2020. And they look at your payroll through that time. It can be payroll for you if you're a sole proprietor, payroll for you and your W-2 associates, and also payroll for your 1099 contractors as well. That's payroll that you can take. And so you have to have a demonstrated need. And the loan is at 4% for up to 10 years, and you can get a couple of abatements on that. And the portion that can be forgiven has to be proven. And so the portion that's forgiven automatically 2 months of rent and utilities, and then also any portion of that up to 2 months of paid coronavirus leave. So what is paid coronavirus leave? That is if there's a total shutdown in your area and people can't go to work and you're not allowed, and you're not considered an essential service, and your people can't work because the government said you cannot go to work. Or paid leave is when someone is sick and they stay home and you pay them. Or if they have a relative that's sick and they have to stay home and you pay them. Or if they've been exposed and they stay home and you have to pay them. You're kind of getting the picture of what is paid coronavirus leave. It's not like you're still getting some revenue in and you're paying these people to do your job during this time of this era in our country. It's can you prove that that you're using this for paid coronavirus leave? So these PPPs are through your bank. And you can also apply for that loan that I just spoke about, that up to $2 million loan. For that up to $2 million that I just spoke about, we're asking for 8 months of expenses for our clients because we don't know how long this is going to last. For that previous loan program, there are 0 payments for 12 months. So we're helping our clients get as much as they can and then saying, yeah, we hope you don't ever have to use it. And then you can pay it back on day 364. This program with the PPP, you also, if you don't use it, you can also pay it back. There are no prepayment penalties. And then to get this loan forgiven, you do have to prove that you used it for the purpose of paying paid coronavirus leave. Now, if you never get this PPP loan, whatever you're paying out to people for paid coronavirus leave, you can get reimbursed for that. Whether you're paying for it out of pocket, if you give a loan to your business to pay for it, if your business is paying for paid coronavirus leave, if you get a federal government loan, a state loan, or any other sort of loan in order to pay for paid coronavirus leave, up to 2 months of that will be forgiven. If you get this PPP loan to do that, then that's a loan forgiveness, and this particular loan is just wiped away. If you do it through another source of funds, then it comes as a dollar-for-dollar tax credit on your 2020 taxes. So let's say you paid $100,000 for paid coronavirus leave, and you paid it out of pocket or through some other loan program or a federal disaster loan program. On your 2020 taxes, you say, I paid $100,000 in paid coronavirus leave, and then you get a dollar-for-dollar credit, which we then feel like there will be a form in which you can apply that to your federal debt that you have. Or if you've paid it out of pocket, you will get that as a refund to you, minus any taxes that you owe. So I know that's a lot of information. So let's go on and talk about I actually want to tell you also, hang on, let me see if this is, okay. So I'm gonna go back a couple more slides, I'm sorry. I added to this, and I want to tell you what my company does. Now you can definitely do this on your own. So there are a couple sites for your state and also for the SBA, and also the SBDC provides free help for these services. My company, for a fee, it's through the federal government gives a guideline for what we can charge for that. And so my company is charging $2,500 in order to apply for our Florida clients for their Florida Bridge the Gap loan, for the federal disaster fund, and also we help with that PPP loan through banks. So we're helping clients apply for all of that because we don't want anybody to be unprepared. Listen, there are no payments on these things for a while. We're telling our clients to get what you're approved for because we don't really, there's so much uncertainty with this. We don't want anyone to go under. And these loans also are not intended to replace revenue. They're intended to pay your expenses so that you can keep your people paid and keep your doors open so that when the demand returns, you will be in business. Sort of like Whitney was talking about when some of your competitors who are not creditworthy enough to get these loans or who are not clever enough to, have 12 Mavens or to, look this up on their own, they will go out of business during this time and you'll be able to capture that market share. And in effect, you'll be able to then pay back these loans and be better off when the demand does come back. So my company, what we do is we walk people through this process. We do everything for them. We take their application over the phone and then we collect all their file documents and then we make those separate applications and we keep our clients abreast of that. I just understand this is a time in my life where my cell phone is right here. It's like attached. It doesn't leave. This is where it is all the time. And I answer any questions. In fact, having difficulty, I had a client that was having difficulty in getting groceries. And so we set up grocery delivery for him. And then I have another client whose wife is an ICU nurse and we set her up with a trauma therapist. So really, any question, we're solving lots of problems here. So I do want to tell you also, and these slides are out of order, I apologize for that. I just updated it before we got on this call. But if you have existing SBA loans right now, if you have any sort of existing SBA loan right now, the next 6 months, beginning with your next payment, is forgiven. The SBA is paying your next 6 payments for you, including principal and interest and fees for the next 6 months. You will want to just give your lender a heads up and say, hey, I have a loan. From what I understand, everything's okay. Am I okay? And so the language in this bill that was passed on Friday is that the SBA is responsible for making these payments for you, and you do not need to pay them back if you have an SBA loan outstanding right now. Now, there are also grants. See this link too that I have on here on my 3rd bullet point. You want to go right there, right now, and apply for a $10,000 grant. So it's available on a limited basis because they only have so much in this fund, but it is a federal SBA grant, and it's for businesses under 500 employees. You're going to need to know your annual revenue from February 1, 19 through January 31 of 2020, and the application will tell you that. You also need to have your social security number, your tax ID number, and also your bank account that you want this $10,000 to go into. We haven't gotten any guidance on how many applications have been made. Just do this right now to get that $10,000 grant. These SBA 6 months of payments on your existing SBA loans and this $10,000 grant, these do not need to be paid back. Now, for folks that need help from us or that need some direction and guidance on their particular business situation, this final link here is our link to our business plan questionnaire, and it goes directly to me, and then I direct traffic from there. And now some folks are not a good fit for us, and we send them to credit repair, or they're really savvy and they do it themselves, and we give them some guidance in our checklist for the documents to send. And then folks are maybe a better fit for SBDC, and then again, other folks do hire us for this professional service that we provide. Now, additionally, my company, you can include an optional loan statement with your loan applications, and that is part of the expertise that we provide, having been writing business plans for companies that need SBA loans for almost 6 years now. We write these loan statements with an SBA underwriting audience in mind, and I do the analysis personally to find out what is the amount that makes sense to ask for a state loan or a federal loan or a PPP loan, and we're doing those analyses for our clients. So, everybody, we're all in the same boat here, and my only advice is to, just help everyone. If you figure something out, tell everyone. If you got some tricks, if you made some hacks, please tell us. So, and that's it. Thank you so much. That's all I've got.
Great. Thank you so much, Bethany. And we'll open it up to a few questions if that's all right. I know, there's a lot of posts and information about some of these different things. For somebody watching this that's almost overwhelmed with all the different things available, where do you suggest, where do they go? Where do they do? How do they should they try, for all of them and see what sticks? Or what would somebody that's not sure exactly what direction to go start with?
So I'll send a couple of links. So in the chat. So this is the link for the $10,000 grant. So please, go there and apply for that grant right now. You can also go to SBA.gov and look for that disaster loan, and that's the up to $2 million loan program. Also, go to your bank. Mm-hmm. Go to your banker about the PPP loan. That's the reimbursable loan. Ask your banker, hey, are you guys going to have this program? And begin gathering your documents. I can send Jess a link to our checklist that has all the documents that we're submitting for our clients, and that's what you're going to want to gather. You want to tell your banker, hey, I have all these documents all in one place. When you have your application ready, I have all my documents ready to go. And that, through your banker, is that 2.5 months. That 2.5 months of paid leave and rent and utilities. Now, the federal program that we have through the SBA.gov disaster program, that's up to $2 million, and we're asking for a lot more. We're asking for 8 months of expenses for our clients. And so it's no payments for 12 months. And so we're just helping our people prep for, who knows? You watch the news and it's different every day.
Great. Yeah, if you put those links or send them to me, and I'll get them to everybody after this as well, and make sure everybody knows the first steps to go in your information as well. It seemed like, at least from some of my looking into some of the stuff, in conversations with you before today, the credit score of about a personal credit score of about 640 to 650 and up, and 2 years in business. Is that correct?
Actually, for these programs, you just need to show that you were in business prior to February 1st of 2020.
Okay.
And actually, if you're a sole proprietor, you can get these benefits as well.
Right. Okay. So yeah, because we have everybody from an army of one to hundreds of employees on this thing today, and so if their personal credit score is, say, not ideal, maybe for whatever reason, in particular direction you recommend for those people?
So let's talk about what the reasons are. If you have medical and your credit is hovering around 630 to 650, if it's a medical debt, or if there's a divorce, or if there's something explainable, like I talked to a client yesterday and he has perfect payment history, but very little credit prior to 2 years before he started establishing his perfect credit. So if there's like no credit, we can explain that as well. If there are logical explanations for the reason why the credit is not 650 or higher, then we can look at that. Otherwise, we do send people to credit repair to have some of the blemishes removed.
Great. And we've got some questions coming out. I'll start with one in the chat and then we can open it up like we did for Dr. DeWitt. For EIDL, do you have to show an economic collapse? My business is still fine, but we are seeing a weakening pipeline that is pushing out new client closes, so won't be fine in a few months. And I think that's the case for a lot of people, where if you look today, it's not too bad, but over these next few months, it's going to get worse.
So thanks for the question, Larry. So that's when we're asking for that larger loan of up to 8 months of expenses to help you keep your doors open. If you don't use like even 3/4 of it, you can send it back because it is 0 payments for the first 12 months. So we're describing in our loan statements, we're starting, this client, we describe it as we're speaking for you, but in this loan statement that we're crafting for these loan programs, we're describing why business is faltering, what we expect to happen, and why we're asking for the funds and how they're going to be paid back. So you do want to describe that you're seeing a trend and you expect some projections to, come back that, you won't be getting that revenue that you were expecting. So have some logical, cogent explanations.
Okay, so there is some negotiating in a sense that you could do it, explaining. It's not just black and white.
Right.
Okay. Let's just open up. If you want to, anybody unmute yourself, we'll go reporter style. And
well, and I do see Tony's question here.
Yeah.
So the portion, you can get these loans for anything that seems justifiable.
Right.
So what we're seeing in sentiment and also in practice, we're seeing that the government is responding very favorably. Our state in Florida, where I am, and also at the federal level, they're fixing problems really quickly. There was a server problem last Thursday, and it was solved with a different novel solution the next day, which is not any federal government that I recognize. And then they're also giving loans to companies they're saying that basically every company that is not like, I'm not being flippant, but if you're not producing surgical masks and Purell, basically everyone is impacted. And so they're being very generous with creditworthy folks in providing the funding that's necessary in order to last through the duration. So you can be there, so the backbone of small business is there when the demand comes back. So we're seeing very generous returns on that. Now the forgivable portion of it is paid coronavirus leave. That's the forgivable portion. You will need to keep records, and your CPA will probably want to see very, good documentation on this, who you're paying for paid coronavirus leave, when, and then it does max out at 2 months of that. So if you are shut down for, up to 2 months of that currently is what is the forgivable portion. And whether it's forgivable through the forgivable loan, which is through your bank, or if it's forgivable essentially on your taxes, if that money comes from somewhere else. It's a dollar for dollar tax credit if you don't have this forgivable loan.
And
Bethany, if I have enough money to make it through the storm and I can probably get a loan from a bank anyway, am I going to be rejected?
That's what I was going to ask. That's a good question. That's a good question.
So if you have credit available elsewhere, the SBA is usually pretty firm on not giving these funds to people that have funding available elsewhere for the disaster, they're more flexible on it. We're encouraging people to apply for these anyway, even if you have credit available elsewhere. Now, if you do have that credit available elsewhere, you may have a higher interest rate, which again, they're both hovering around 4%. For the federal disaster EIDL program, that up to 8 months that we're asking for people, that's 3.75%. And then it's 4% for that PPP forgivable loan, because portions of that are probably not going to be forgivable, even though you pull it out.
Ken asks, is there a limit to how many loans you can apply for?
You can apply for everything. You can only apply the forgiveness to one of those. So if you're spending from whatever place, you can't get loan forgiveness if you're already claiming on your taxes the coronavirus paid leave, wherever you got that money from a federal fund. We're encouraging everyone to apply for everything that makes sense. So we're saying, yes, apply for both the federal, your state also, if your state has one, and then also that PPP loan through your bank. Now that PPP program may not be rolled out and the funds may not be available for another 30 to 40 days. So we're trying to act quickly in other ways.
Michael asked, do owners like LLC members qualify for loans and PPP?
Yes.
Okay. Stephen asked, can a startup company that's pre-revenue qualify?
You have to have been in business prior to February 1, so you will have had to have incorporated before then. You will not probably be able to justify as much, but if you're paying people, if you're continuing to pay them, there will be an argument for you to pull that money out and get a loan for it, for at least for payroll and for rent expense and utilities.
Okay. And I've seen a lot of, 2 years in business, but you're saying that if you're a year or year and a half, you're still okay.
So the company has been in business for 2 years, although we would just slated to launch this month. So we have 3 employees that have accepted their employment offers, but are not currently on payroll, as well as we were slated to launch the pay rent starting this month as well. So we have nothing.
So
But
they want to look at your trailing P&L. Let's try. First of all, apply for that $10,000 grant. And fill out your application. I would suggest you not hire a company like me to do that. I would suggest going in on your own because I'm less certain of your odds of getting funded for that. I would say that that's something that needs to be very closely underwritten, and you would need to stay close to the SBA on that when you're applying. That's a unique circumstance.
yeah, so we actually already applied both for the loan and the grant. So I'll let everyone know at some point whether we were successful or not. We'll have a better.
If you have, Michael asked if you have enough liquidity to go through this, do you still advise to go loan route or take a tax credit?
We think you might be funding expenses for 8 months. And so we're saying pull some loans out that have 0 payments for 12 months because you do not want to blow through your own nest egg in anticipation of that dollar for dollar tax credit. Because again, that dollar for dollar tax credit covers the 2 months of paid coronavirus leave and the 2 months of your rent. And they calculate it based on 2.5 times your average from the previous running 12 months. So we say, take the loan out. And if you never use it, you're fine. You can pay it back on like the 364th day. But personally, I would pull out the loan and use those proceeds before using my own, because the duration of this is could be longer than April 30th, which to an introvert like me, it was like stay at home for another month. I mean, that's fine. However, businesses may be, in this limbo for another 6 or 7 months. And actually, I'll tell you too, that part of the $2 trillion that was granted on Friday was in subsidizing all of the airlines for 6 months of their employees' payroll. So they're anticipating for airlines to be fronting 6 months of payroll. So that was written into the bill. So that's why we're very comfortable asking for 8 months of expenses on the larger EIDL loans for our clients.
Does the 650 plus credit score affect both PPP and EIPL?
Yeah, those are both going to be underwritten directly by the SBA for the EIDL and also for the PPP through your bank. Your bank maybe have some tougher credit restrictions. The SBA, if you have 650 and a good explanation, either like no credit or like divorce or medical or something like that, if there's a good explanation, or like, you know, you've had payments on time for the last 2 years and there was like something else 2 years ago or whatever, just give an explanation for it. 650 is okay with an explanation.
Okay, and interest starts accruing, interest starts accruing upon funding, is that correct? Even if it's not drawn down?
I'm sorry, could you ask that question one more time? I was reading the chat, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Tony says, and interest starts accruing upon funding, correct? Even if it's not drawn down?
So the
So
PP
I'm fuzzy on that. I don't know. So we don't know. We just know that there are no payments for 12 months. I don't know if interest is applied in that first 12 months. That's a question I don't have.
Okay.
I don't have an answer to that.
Larry asked how long to work through the app process for EIDL.
So if you have all of your documents in one place, if you are able to gather your, you know, like 940s, 941s, your tax returns from 17 and 18, or if you just have 18 and 19, that's good too. Your personal and business tax returns, and then your application and things like that. And we have a checklist that I'll send to Jeff shortly. But if you have all those things together and fill out your application, you know, it just doesn't take that long to apply. Now, hearing back will take some time. So there's an initial on the federal EIDL program. There's an initial $25,000 disbursement. That's part of the loan. It's not a grant. It's part of the lended funds. And that's based on the creditworthiness. If you're passing those initial tests of, you know, arrest history in the last 6 months, creditworthiness, and, you know, defaulting on government loans. And so they do an initial disbursement of $25,000. That's within a few days of applying is what we're hearing. And then that full underwriting happens. We're seeing about 17 days on that.
All right, and I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're probably phone's blowing up in your pocket, Bethany. I don't know how many more questions you're able to.
I put it on do not disturb, so I'm going to worry about it later.
Okay, well, that's just a few more questions. I want to be respectful of everybody's time as well, and let you guys all get back to actually filling in all this stuff and getting started on it. Let's see, you listed 3 types of loans: Florida disaster recovery, federal disaster, and paycheck protection program. Is that accurate? Are there other government resources, not including one-off grants like Facebook?
So there is that $10,000 grant program that if you scroll up to the top of the chat, and let's keep this open for a little bit because there are some helpful links where I first posted. So there's that $10,000 grant that you can apply for. Again, limited funds, and you need to do that like now. And then there are the other loan programs, and there is an element of all of those loan programs that will be forgiven, whether it's specifically as that loan forgiveness from the PPP or forgiven in the form of a dollar for dollar tax credit on your taxes. So those are really the only things that are available. Your state, that federal up to $2 million, and then the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program through your bank. And those are really what's available right now, unless you're a larger corporation, over 500 employees.
Great. Michael asked, can we get a link to your PowerPoint? And if yes, can we distribute it to clients giving credit to you?
Thank you so much. Yes, that would be amazing. And I do have on my questionnaire, I do ask how you heard about us. And so we'll, you know, very much appreciate the referrals. And so our questionnaire is, I'll post a link here. I did post my email in there, so you may see it, but I'm going to post the link for our questionnaire, and that helps me route you. And I speak to everyone that does this questionnaire. I talk to you on the phone. And then my email is
Bethany, a quick testimonial. I did your 26 questions last week. We talked 3 hours later. Efficient, helpful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Good.
And then I'm including my email right there.
Yeah. So if you haven't opened the chat on your screen there, you should have an option to click on chat, and you'll see the links. You might have to scroll up above the questions to get some of the links that she's posted in here. I'll try to recirculate any links that'll be helpful to all you guys after this is over. Let's see, there's a couple last questions before we wrap up. What is your assumption for 8 months of expenses? Why not 7 or 9?
You know, I don't know. I just work with numbers a lot, and that's what I was feeling. So I can't even say that, like, you know, don't even, I mean, it's my intuition on that. It's just my intuition is, you know, and some businesses are different. Like if you're an HVAC contractor and you're making some revenue, you're still going to be paying for some of your accounts payable and, you know, some of your labor as well. So it's really kind of a calculation that I'm making personally based on the type of business. If you're a restaurant or a hotel, we need to get you some help like immediately. If you're an HVAC contractor, you're kind of an emergency service, but people don't really want you in their homes. And so it truly is just emergencies right now. And so we're kind of working off of maybe like a portion of 8 months of payroll for that and a portion of workers' comp insurance for that. But here's the things. Let me just tell you some of the things that we're asking for in those 8 months. So rent, utilities, payroll, any officer payroll under $100,000 or any other employee payroll under $100,000 or up to $100,000. Utilities, telephone, and accounts payable as well. So this is intended to pay your suppliers too, because it all just keeps everybody getting paid and in the economic infrastructure.
And one of the questions was to include your contact info in the chat, and that's in there. And if you look at you know, Bethany at rapidbusinessplans.com, rapidbusinessplans.com, you can see in the email address where to go to the link to get more information. And if you want to hop on a call with her after this, and this is not an infomercial in any way. You've even told people several times certain things that they could do without you, which is just awesome. But I filled out the app. Which is not asked for documents. Where do I submit the documents? I have app submit number.
So I will get you a link, Jeff. There's a link where you can upload a zip drive, and my staff does that. So I'll find out what that link is, and I'll send it. That's where you would upload those documents.
Somebody's asking about support for companies that rely on contractors versus employees.
1099.
Fernando.
So yeah, so your independent contractors are covered under that paycheck protection. So when you're asking for they're using a multiplier, your average monthly payroll for a rolling 12 months, a trailing 12 months, and then multiplying by 2.5. Your contractors, your 1099 contractors are included in that calculation if you wish.
Great.
Can we have our 1099 contractors apply directly?
So there is an element where I think there's going to be some check and balance on the double dipping. I mean, I think the system is going to be so overwhelmed that it, you know, perhaps maybe overlooked, but we really want people to have money in their pockets. So I would encourage your contractors to apply for themselves. And then in any calculations that you're making, definitely, you know, apply for them as well. But I would be cognizant of the fact that if your contractor is already getting assistance from the government for their, if you're already getting assistance, if your contractor is already getting assistance from other places, you may not get reimbursed on their paid coronavirus leave. So I would, you know, just be cognizant of the fact that that the paid leave that you're paying to them, if they're getting help elsewhere from a federal level, that you may not get reimbursed on that portion if they're double dipping somewhere else.
Okay, Larry says I have applied for an EIDL loan and submitted on Saturday, but no acknowledgement from SBA other than each submittal was successful. So is that?
So I do also have an email address where you can check your status. But I would say that if you send it on Saturday, they're not having a first look for, you know, about 6 or 7 days. So I would give it some more time, and then that's when you would expect to hear from them. If you haven't, for instance, given them a bank account, like your routing and account number, then they're going to do that initial $25,000 disbursement for the EIDL. So if you haven't heard from that, then it's not time yet. And so they'll be asking me for that because they'll want to know where to send the funds.
Thank you so much. We could keep going forever, I'm sure, but everybody, we got to go get those $10,000 grants, get on top of all this stuff. We're going to keep putting these together. I saw a great quote from a song the other day as, you know, I'm you know, the last couple of weeks were bombs hitting and shock and like, what do we do? Feelings all across the board and within our community of business leaders. And then now it's starting to where we're starting to see people coming out of the ashes and starting to prepare and build and helping each other get to safety. And through the survive mode over these next weeks and into helping each other thrive. I want to thank Dr. DeWitt. I want to thank Bethany for your time, for sharing this stuff, for you guys for asking questions. Use the group chat, and you guys, we have these group chat, abilities to communicate. We're working on rebuilding everything right now, so the whole community can be part of a group chat as well. I want to end it with a quote from the song that I was just referencing. The lyrics are, "You have risen from the ashes before. The only way to survive," he said, "is to believe you always will." Entrepreneurs are survivors. We don't stop swinging. I showed my kids Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, and Rocky 4 over the last 2 weeks to show them how you just get, you get up and you push yourself off the ropes and just freaking keep swinging. Keep swinging, guys. We'll line up the next one and the next one and the next one, and we're going to make sure everybody gets through this and kicks ass on the other side of it. Thank you for being here. We'll get the recording to all of you guys if you needed to go back and watch a certain part again. Love you guys, and I'll be here. Reach out to me, reach out to each other, and let's keep going. All right. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.